Okay, so it's 7:04 now, sir.
Right.
Uh, we should formally welcome everyone who has been here now, and people will join in. It's truly a privilege and altogether a pleasure sitting in Delhi experiencing Kerala. My name is Mohit. I'm the founder of City Book Leaders. And when it comes to books, we think of it in a very holistic way, though we are a social platform where we talk about books and we try to bring various conversations together. And that's how Mr. Joseph and I met to discuss his book, which is My Driver Trelong, which is a beautiful narrative of Cambodia. And later on, we thought, how can we bring in more from Kerala to everyone here in the world? And during the pandemic times, while people were not able to visit Kerala, how is it so that we can actually show them Kerala in a very holistic way? What happens for people like me in North, we go to Kerala, we go to certain places, we just click pictures, come back. But I think Kerala is a country in itself, I must say. It has so much into it that you need a lifetime or more than that to experience Kerala. And in the last 14 episodes, and today in this 15th episode of All That's Kerala, we are truly privileged to have none other than Mr. Sohan KJ as our guest of honor to discuss about what Kerala is all about. But I would request our host of the series, Mr. MP Joseph, and I've been hearing so much about him from all the previous guests who have come in, and I will take a liberty to actually call him the youngest looking bureaucrat who is retired, as one of his very close friends, batchmates mentioned in the last episode, and many of you would relate to it. And I think it's because he's always engaged into learning. He's always engaged into new ideas. He always keeps thinking about something new that can be done. And it seems that's in the water of the Kerala, I guess. And when it comes to Kerala, there could be no one better than our dear friend Aditi, who's the director of Kerala Museum, which is the most happening place in Kerala. If anyone visits, I have been to that place once, and I just love the overall collection, and I look forward to be there very soon. Kerala Museum is a place where ideas converge, and definitely Aditi is the true custodian of that art. I welcome Aditi. She was busy in some other curation work that she was doing in the past few sessions, but today we are privileged to have her here. So Aditi, why don't you take us through this journey of All That's Kerala's 15th episode?
Thank you, Mohit. Hello to you all. Good evening. My name is Aditi, and I am the museum director at the Kerala Museum. It's located in Edapalli, very close to Lulu Mall. And I must take this opportunity to ask you all to visit. We reopen on the 1st of March, and you must all come in and partake in our offerings. I'm going to get straight to it. We've been doing this All That's Kerala, a wonderful series actually that presents to you various aspects of Kerala's, this drive for innovation and learning that Mohit has been talking about, and many stalwarts, many iconic figures that have been interviewed now by Mr. Joseph. And they've been informal and lively chats. And through these chats, we've gotten a small picture of their perspectives on Kerala. So today we have with us another iconic figure, um, Mr. Sohan, Mr. KJ Sohan, who is former Kochi city mayor. He was mayor in 1990 and Fort Kochi Valley councillor. He's a town planning expert and was the chairman of the town planning committee during the UDF-led Kochi Corporation. He's a heritage and art enthusiast. He played a big role in the Biennale and continues to play a big role in the fate of Fort Cochin. He believes in preserving cities and art and cultural activities. He has been and is an authority on issues related to heritage in Kochi for the last 3 decades. It's a pleasure to welcome this icon of Kochi to All That's Kerala. Welcome, Mr. Sohan.
Thank you so much, Titi. Thanks for that nice introduction of Sohan. Many in Cochin and Kerala don't really require an introduction, but then for those from outside, I think that's a very well structured introduction. Thank you so much. Let me thank everybody for being here tonight. This is the 15th episode of All That's Kerala. a chat along the backwaters. It's a fortnightly program, and as Atiti said, we've had many guests from different parts of the country. This is a program that is driven by city book leaders, Mohit, who just spoke to you, and in a sense, fueled along by the Kerala Museum, Atiti, who is in charge of it. What the program seeks to do is to introduce Kerala to the world, to India, and of course to Kerala itself. I'm especially thank Mohit and Atiti for their support to the program. The whole concept of All That's Kerala was a concept that was given to us by Mohit. So thank you, Mohit, for the concept and for the innovations that you've brought in. Today's episode is about Kochi. It was formerly known as Cochin, and it's a city that has got more than 2,000 years of history. Kochi is on the shores of the Arabian Sea and is known as the Queen of the Arabian Sea, a name that perhaps symbolizes the romance that Cochin is. Kochi is also where the backwaters that makes Kerala so quaint geographically. It's where the mouth of the backwaters is. And it's famous in that respect. It's also the financial, commercial, and the industrial capital of Kerala. It's got the highest GDP, as well as the highest GDP per capita in the state. I'm told about 2/3 of the total commercial taxes, sales tax in the past, and GST now comes from Ernakulam district, of which the city of Cochin is a part. The city is also home to the Southern Naval Command and is the state headquarters of the Indian Navy. Cochin was a very important spice trading center on the west coast from the 14th century onwards, and maintained a trade network even earlier with Arab merchants in the pre-Islamic era, which is talking about 2,000 years. So Kochi was the center of the Indian spice trade for many centuries, and was known to the Greeks and the Romans, as well as to the Jews, to the Syrians, to the Arabs, and of course to the Chinese, since at least a couple of thousand years. But it really rose into significance as a trading center after the port of Muciris, which is around Kodungalur or Kranganur, which is about 30 kilometers north of Cochin, was destroyed by a massive flooding in the Periyar River in the year 1341. That is when Cochin rose into significance. And when within 5 years after Vasco da Gama landed at Kappad on the beach near Kozhikode, Kochi became the first European colony in India, with the Portuguese colonizing the town in 1503, just 5 years after the landing of Vasco da Gama in India on the shores of Malabar. Kochi was the seat of the Portuguese rule until 1530, when the Portuguese moved on to Goa. Later, the Dutch came in and took control of Cochin, and then the British took control until 1947, when, of course, India became independent, and Cochin became a part of independent India. Cochin then is, in many ways, the gateway to God's own country. And then, when you want to talk about Cochin, the Queen of the Arabian Sea, its past, its future, who best to talk about it than Sohan, who was introduced to you just now by Atiti. Today is February 21st, just 7 days after Valentine's Day. For Sohan, I think his first Valentine is Cochin, and he has contributed very greatly to our understanding of Cochin. He was a former mayor of Cochin, the city father. He is convener of Intact Kerala, and he is patron of the Kochi Muciris Binale. So Cochin is his first love, and he knows so much about Cochin, and he's certainly the best guest we can have to tell us about Cochin. So thank you, Sri Sohan, for being with us today. Thank you for agreeing to chat and talk about all that you know about Cochin, which is a great deal. Let me start off by asking you this question. You're known as a lover of Cochin. You know so much about Cochin. What is it that attracts you so much to Cochin? Why do you love the city so much? Sohan, are you with me? Sohan, are you there?
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Why do you love the city so
Yeah.
much? That's your Valentine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the city so much. I was born here, brought up here, gone around so many cities, and then this city is unique in so many ways that from the rest of it. That uniqueness springs from the history of that city. The footprints that when you look back, you can be proud of what we have gone through the city. As you rightly said when you started off, original footprint of Cochin is Muziris, 30 kilometers north of the present day Cochin. Is the old city of Muziris, which in 1341 in a flood or some natural phenomenon, maybe it was a tsunami or God knows what, but then the harbor got silted. A harbor that has survived for thousands and thousands of years, and the whole world came in search of spices. That was the center of what is known as Kerala, but it was part of the Cochin kingdom. Kerala, as you know, was three parts. One was the Travancore under the Maharaja of Travancore. The other was Malabar under the Samudri. And third was a small, sandwich between the two big kingdoms was Cochin Maharaja, Kochi kingdom. And Muziris was part of Kochi. Muziris, in the real sense, it's called Muchiripattanam. Muchiripattanam it's part of the Tamil Chola Empire. And this was the place where the world came for spices. And because of the tolerant attitude of the rulers, all these people, the trade flourished in such a long way. All the communities from across the globe were welcome here. So this is one aspect that not only everybody looks on to Kochi for. That is the tolerance with which the rulers and the people have survived all these years, all the migrant communities that has come in. And
speaking
when
of
these
tolerance, Sohan, there are so many, as you're just saying, there's so many different communities living in this small space, and that I think is an indicator of tolerance of the Cochin Maharaja. The Jews, the Saraswat Brahmins from the Konkan coast when they were persecuted by the Portuguese, Anglo-Indians, the St. Thomas Christians, the Nasranis, followers of St. Thomas, the Latin Christians who came after the Portuguese, Muslims, and one of the first, perhaps the first mosque in the country, and one of the first few mosques in the world was built in Kodungalur. Hindus of many different castes. So that they've left, that shows us the tolerance that you said. Now, what is it that keeps these communities together?
It is these three communities, Semitic, all the three religions, Semitic religions came in through the Cochin Gateway. That is from Muziris. Whether it is Judaism, whether it is Islam, whether it is Christianity, all three came from this. India came into contact with all these three religions here. And the history of religion in Cochin is where the king welcomed all of them and permitted them, allotted them land to build their mosque or church, even churches and mosques. When these communities did not have the money to support it, the Maharaja provided funds to build the church or the mosque or the synagogue. Even the teachers who were teaching the Jewish language, Hebrew, half the salary was paid by the Maharaja. Similarly with Arabs, with the Christianity, everywhere. So that tolerance from Muziris, when Muziris died in 1341, and the Cochin harbor, the Cochin channel opened up in a big way, slowly the trading community started migrating to what is Cochin today. So you can see in Muziris itself, many of these communities were there. But when these communities started, the traders started coming on, first the Gujaratis came in here, then followed by the Arabs, all these communities one by one, the trade shifted to this place. The Maharaja also shifted to the present day Cochin or Fort Cochin. He built his palace here and settled down here. So with that, the other communities also started migrating to Cochin. And today we have, if you go around Fort Cochin and Matanjeri, we have 15 unique ethnic settlements.
How many? 15,
15. As you said, the Gauda Saraswat Brahmins, there are Tamil Brahmins are there, the Marathis are there, the Gujaratis are there, the Jains both, the Digambaras and the Swadambaras are there. In the European settlement, you have the Anglo-Indian community. In the Arab settlement, you have the Malabari Muslim community. Then we have the the other Tamil communities. Then the Kachi Memons who came from the border of Pakistan, the Kachis. So the Pathans who came from Hyderabad. So all these communities, they are settled in different localities. And
so what keeps them together today?
Yeah, they are all still there today. And in the center of all these settlements, you can see their place of worship. The place of worship is the center, and around that, if anybody has an idea of a town planning and architecture and all those things, you can see the architecture of the land they came from. When you go to the Tamil quarter, you can see Agraharams. When you go to the Arab or the Malabari Muslim quarter, you can see a township like which is built in the desert. When you go to the Anglo-Indian settlement, which was the former European settlement, you can see a European town. So everywhere you can see these variations. You have the food habits are so different, the dress habits are so different, the rituals, religious, even communities which are Hindus, 3 different communities, 4 different communities, they have all the rituals are different. The 3 Muslim communities, their rituals are vastly different. So they don't meet. It's not a melting pot. It is still a mosaic. And that is the beauty of Cochin, old Cochin.
One of the influences that we have in Cochin is a Chinese influence. We have these Chinese fishing nets, and then we use the China chatti, which is really the Chinese wok, for our cooking widely, not only in Cochin, but all across Kerala. So where did this Chinese influence come from?
Chinese were just traders. They did not make a settlement here. They came, they traded, and when we say China, we have the whole of the East, or what we call today Southeast Asia, right from Japan, China, Indochina, then Malaysia, Indonesia, all the there is a small community of Indonesians here who were brought by the Dutch and the Portuguese, and they are also classified as Anglo-Indians, but their dress habits and their features, everything is totally different, and they are also an Anglo-Indian community, we call them. But when we say China, the whole of East Asia comes under China. They were traders. And because of those linkages, we have the Chinese net, we have not only the China chatti, that's a frying pan, then we have the China veli, we have the China velakku, China padakam, everything that came from China. Even today, we have this addition to it.
What is China padakam? What is China?
China padakam is the firecrackers that we use today.
Right, the small ones.
All the small ones. Actually, it has got a tag.
What is the other thing you mentioned?
China veli. That is the bamboo. This thing you use for decorations in the weddings and all those things. And the China lamp, the hanging lamp, that is called the China velak. So China has got China chatti. The bowl is called China plate. What is called the ceramics. Most of the ceramics have got a China attached. So
that's wonderful. Now, St. Thomas is believed to have landed in Muziris near Kodungalur, which, as you said, is about 30 kilometers north of Cochin. Islam also came to Kodungalur, as I mentioned earlier, and the Chera king provided not only the land, but a lot of money for constructing the first mosque in Kerala and perhaps the first mosque in India. So there is all this religious coexistence. What do you see as the future of this religious coexistence? Do you see it continuing? What is the future of this?
No, now this is going to be the future, because all these communities have come in, and now we are in a globalized world. All this happened, the first cosmopolitanization of maybe in India happened in this place at a time when globalization was not heard of even. And when we talk of that, this is the first European settlement in the whole of you mentioned earlier, it's the whole of the east of the Suez. This is the first European settlement, Fort Cochin. The Portuguese flag, we have there's a ground here we call it parade ground in English. In Malayalam, we call it the Baraka Maidan. Baraka means barracks in Portuguese. That was the arsenal as well as their armed forces. The barracks of the armed forces is today the very famous ground next to the famous St. Francis Church. St. Francis Church is where Vasco da Gama is buried. And that was the place where the first overseas empire, the flag of the first overseas empire, flew. The Portuguese, they were here for nearly 160 years. Then came the Dutch. So the Dutch flag also flew there. And the last empire, the British, that flag also flew there. And the British named it the parade ground. After Baraka, they named it the parade ground. And the Union Jack was lowered.
Parangi, what is that? The cashew nuts are called.
Yeah, cashew nuts are cashew. See, most of the things that we use daily here now, we take it for granted. Whether it is tea, coffee, cashew nut, tapioca, the red chili, the jackfruit, pineapple, so many. I can list out such a lot of things. All these were brought in here by the different people who came to settle down here. Coffee was brought here by the Arabs from East Africa. Portuguese took it to Brazil.
Raja informs us through a message that tea was also something that the Chinese brought in, and a lot of vegetables.
No, tea was introduced by the British. It was from the hills of Assam and China that it was brought here. And the tea was brought here by the British. Rubber was brought here by the British from Brazil. Coffee by the Arabs. Tapioca. And most of these things that came in here, tapioca and cashew and all, it's got another attachment to it. That is, when Vasco da Gama went back to Portugal, the value of the pepper that he brought there was 60 to 80 times of the market price. So the king sent another fleet of 12 ships under Pedro Alvarez Cabral. And Cabral, on his way to Cochin, he met with a storm in the Atlantic and the whole fleet was taken to Brazil. That is how the South America was discovered by the Portuguese. And Brazil still speaks Portuguese language. So from there, without going back to Europe, he sailed, the whole fleet sailed directly to Fort Cochin. Just imagine him sailing in that period of time when there were no charts and things like that. And in that trip, they brought all these things to Kerala, or to India.
My 2 pennies worth, I believe when the Portuguese came, they brought Mozambique, which is actually Mozambique. Is that also correct?
Mozambique is orange.
Orange, yes.
Yeah.
Mozambique is actually Mozambique on the west coast of.
That is the Mozambique. They used to take Mozambique or this orange from Mozambique on the way to Cochin, because a lot of people died of sailors died of scurvy. In the earlier days, only half the sailors went back to their country because it was so risky to sail all this way from Europe to across the Cape of Good Hope to India. So Mozambique was one thing that was good for scurvy.
And just to add, for those who do not know, Parangi, which we are talking about so much, Parangi is actually a variation of Firang. Firang in Hindi or Urdu means the foreigner, and I suppose a foreigner is still known as a Firangi in the north. So the connectivity of the words is also very, the etymology of words is also very interesting area. I'll move on. Fort Cochin is a very quaint town. It's partly European, it's partly Indian, it's partly everything. How do you think that this quintessence of Fort Cochin, which actually is the heart of Cochin in a way, how do you think that can be preserved?
Preservation is Fort Cochin is the biggest challenge now what we are facing today. Now it has become a very high touristic place. After in 90 we declared, the city corporation declared Fort Cochin as a heritage zone. In the late 80s, a team from Intac came down to study Fort Cochin. And at the time, Rajiv Gandhi was the chairman of Intac. And under KT Ravindran, the team came here. They made a study of Fort Cochin and Matanjeri, submitted a report. And it is titled Fort Cochin Matanjeri, a Heritage Zone Report. Actually, it is 30 years now. Based on that, Fort Cochin was declared a heritage zone. And the government, at the point of time, the government secretary was a very, very, very sensible doctor. Dr. Babu Paul was the government secretary. He constituted an Art and Heritage Commission to supervise the developments in Fort Cochin. So even today, it continues like that. But now the investors are coming in a big way from the Gulf and all over the world. They do not respect these heritage laws and bylaws, and they're not sensitive to all these things. They just want to build huge buildings and cash on the attraction that Fort Cochin has created. That is the challenge that we are facing today.
You spoke about, we are speaking about preserving the quintessence of Fort Cochin. You are the convener of INTAC in Kerala. Firstly, for those who do not know, what does INTAC do? What have their contributions to Cochin been? And as a convener, what is your role in INTAC?
I'm convener of the whole state. Earlier, I was convener for Cochin. INTAC is a national organization. It's also a membership organization, but it is joint hands with the government. Several secretaries of the government are on the governing council because it was constituted by the government of India. And we have a consultative status with the government in most of the states. Even in Kerala, we have that. So we have, just like Fort Cochin, we have taken up studies of different heritage areas. Not only tangible heritage, intangible heritage, and natural heritage also we deal with. We have expert teams going into all these things. We submit it to the government. We do a promotion. We maybe sometimes we go to court over what the government or the private sector people do to keep the places and the iconic structures like that.
Speaking of going to court, I believe the Corporation of Cochin went to court against changing the name of Cochin to Kochi.
Yeah.
The
that was a government move.
Because Cochin has got a romance about it. It's been there for. Is that true?
That is true. Kochi is the old part of Cochin.
There, or was it later?
Later, it was later. But the government then went very strongly and converted it to Cochin. The municipality was actually named Cochin Municipal Corporation. Now, unfortunately, but everything in Cochin is Cochin Port Trust, Cochin International Airport, Cochin Shipyard, Cochin, everything is Cochin. But then the name, unfortunately, the government. So this is the challenge we are facing. The government as a destroyer, the government as a creator, and so it is not only the government, the private sector, everybody. So we are the watchdogs. INTAC is presently the watchdog.
Government is a destroyer, government is a creator, yeah. INTAC as the preserver. Could that be right?
INTAC as the preserver and the watchdog.
What is the full form of INTAC?
Watchdog.
Watchdog also.
Yeah.
What is? It's not an abbreviation.
No, it's a. If anybody goes against the heritage regulations, we take it up with the government, with the authorities, or we even go to court.
I've got a couple of questions from Rajiv Kumar.
Yeah.
Let me, Rajiv Kumar. The first question is: there are so many old buildings and installations in Cochin and neighboring towns and villages that have a heritage and historical value in government ownership, and they're all in very bad condition. How can we conserve these buildings and get our people to appreciate them and their legacy? I think that's a very important question. How do you get people to understand the need to preserve these buildings and to appreciate them and to preserve their legacy?
The Heritage Commission. Government has, as I said earlier, the government has constituted an Art and Heritage Commission. And the chairman of the commission is the Principal Secretary, Urban Development and Urban Affairs. And the member secretary is the Chief Town Planner. So the Chief Town Planner's office has got a special section for heritage. And together with INTAC, with the government, INTAC has joined hands and listed all the heritage buildings. I do not know whether Rajiv mentioned the building Rajiv has got in mind is listed. But we are doing extensive listing all over Kerala, and these listed buildings are published. 2 districts have already come out. That is Wayanad and Trivandrum. The government has brought out the list, and the other districts, the listing is going on, and it will come out. Anybody has got any buildings worth heritage value can contact INTAC so that we will include it in the list. We will make the detailed drawings and documentation of those buildings so it can be preserved.
You see, Rajiv Kumar points out that INTAC comes from, it's an abbreviated form of Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage.
Indian National Trust.
And there's a question from, there's a question from Ram. Ram asks why we cannot have private-public partnership in the preservation of Fort Cochin, Mattancherry, and so on. Has INTAC initiated anything in that regard, bringing public-private partnership to play a role in this?
Actually, it is intact, and the preservation is basically being done by the private sector, because all these buildings that has got a heritage value are now converted to very highly rated hotels. So they are doing the preservation, and we are giving the guidelines. And any other thing, when they go off track, we complain to the Heritage Commission and they take some action. So that is how it is going on now. The other thing, the funds are provided by the tourism department and the municipal corporation. That's how the things are working out in Fort Cochin.
By the way, you said earlier that the Portuguese were the first colonizers west of the Suez.
East of the Suez, yeah.
Now, that brings me to a point which is not very much historically, historically known. I'm referring to the Kunan Kurishi Satyam, the oath of the bent cross, the pledge taken by a large section or one section of the St. Thomas Christians, the Syrian Christians, against the changes in the rituals and the faith that the Portuguese had tried to bring about in the existing faith. Now, this is, as some of you may know, it's a pledge against the interference of a colonial power, the Portuguese colonial power, in the ways of the 2,000-year-old Christian community, the St. Thomas Christians, the Nasrani Christians who were living in Kerala. Now, would you describe this Kunan Kurish Satyam, the oath taken to throw away the Portuguese colonial interference in the Christian faith, in the existing Christian faith? Would you describe this as the first uprising, albeit of a religious nature, against colonialism in Asia, in India, in Asia? Would that be true? Some people have described it that way. It's not very much known. It's just seen as a religious feud, but it could be looked at more beyond that, couldn't it? What's your view on that?
It depends on how you interpret it. It is purely a religious upheaval, because it has nothing to do with colonizing and things like that, because the Orthodox Syrian Christians were here from the time of Christ. And when the Portuguese came here, they did not understand the Orthodox, they did not recognize them. They were attached to Rome, and the Portuguese, all said and done, they were very religious minded, and the administration and the religion went hand in hand. So they forced through the church, the Orthodox Syrians to adopt the Roman rituals. So after the Portuguese left, the Dutch came. Because the Dutch were Protestants and they were totally against the Catholics and the Portuguese, they permitted the Orthodox Syrians who converted to the Roman thing to go back to the original faith. And those who wanted to go back to the original faith, they tied a rope to the cross and took a pledge. That is the Kunan Kurish Satyam, and that is the Kunan Kurish there. So beyond the Orthodox and the Christians and the Syrians and the Latins, we have the Canaanites, we have the Chaldeans, we have all varieties of Christians here, the Marthomites, the Malangara Sabha, so many varieties that nowhere else in the world you may find. And,
I'm not going to into historic discussion, but all that came after the Kunan Kurish. All the split came after the Kunan Kurish. But let's not go into that. Yeah. Let's move on. You are also the patron of the Cochin Musiris Binale. We've had both Krishnamachari and Riaz Komu on All That's Kerala. Now, there's a couple of questions on that from Neil. He says, why can't we extend the Binale beyond Fort Cochin and Matanjeri? It's called the Kochi Musiris Binale, but he says, why can't you extend it beyond Cochin and Matanjeri? Why can't you take it, for example, from Nedumbasheri Airport till Cochin? Any views on that?
Yeah, it is not limited to Cochin. We take it to other places also. Last time we had the Chautanadagam and the expo and performance, everything in the islands north of Cochin. In so many other, in Darbar Hall, we have every year we have a gallery. But then Fort Cochin and Matanjeri is the ideal place for Binale. I don't think you will get a suitable place because all the rundown godowns and warehouses, everything is there. And it gives an ambience and brings attention to the place also. So that is how Binale sticks on to Fort Cochin and Matanjeri alone.
Before I come out with ask you the next question, let me just point out that the next episode of All That's Kerala will be on the 7th of March. And it's a very unique topic we will have for discussion that day. It would be on women, men, menstruation, and Shabarimala. And we have as our guest Ms. Suni Joseph, who has written many well-researched books on why she thinks women should not go to Shabarimala. She will discuss with us the 6 chakras, of which Shabarimala is the 6th chakra, and how women's menstruation, according to her, will be affected if they visit Shabarimala. She argues that the basis of the tradition prohibiting women entry into the temple is based on scientific evidence. That will be on 7th March, 2 weeks from now. Ms. Sumi Joseph talks about women, men, menstruation, and Shabarimala. So let's move on. How do we preserve the architecture, Sohan, that we have inherited? How do we pass on this wealth of architecture and culture that we have got to the next generations? How do we do that? So, are you with me? So, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I think we're unable to hear you. Can you?
You have to unmute, Mr. Sohan. You're muted right now. You're on mute right now. You have to unmute yourself.
Sohan, I think you have to unmute yourself. We seem to have lost Sohan. There's a question from Ajit Jacob. He says, despite all the connections and trade with foreigners, what inhibited Kerala, people in Kerala from exploring these countries to understand their home countries and their technological advancements? Were we too self-sufficient and insular? Were we averse to modernization? Were we just tolerant? That's a very nice question, Sohan. Before I go to the earlier question, let me put this question to you from Ajit Jacob. He says lots of people have come to Kerala. We have absorbed them. We've been very tolerant, but no Malayali has ventured out from the state. We have not gone to Africa. We have not gone to Europe. We have not even gone to China. Were we too insufficient, too self-sufficient? Were we too insular? Were we adverse to modernization, or were we just tolerant? You think you can answer that question?
We were so self-sufficient, and we were not an adventurous people at all, like the Europeans. Even today, we are not only Kerala, Indians have not ventured out very much. It's very, very relatively in a very short sphere only that Indians have ventured out. So Kerala, we were self-sufficient here. We had a different culture.
We've lost you again.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We had a wonderful climatic condition, a good geography, and we were self-sufficient. So, and we were not an adventurous people. We are not a martial race. So all those racial qualities went into keeping us in Kerala itself. And it is that tolerance also another attribute that kept us here. People who are martial, when they go outside, you have to have a militaristic approach. All these Portuguese and the Dutch and the British, all those people who came here, they were just like that.
Thank you. You see, we were speaking of Muziris, and we were speaking of Kochi and Muziris. They're always intertwined. You gave a brief, you gave another name for Muziris, which is not very well known. Can you repeat that for those who have joined later? What is the original name of Muziris? Muziris sounds very, very, very European.
Yeah.
It could not have been European. So
actually,
it has a Indian name.
It's a Tamil word, Muchiripattanam.
Muchiripattanam. Like Machilipatnam in Andhra. Muchiripattanam.
Yeah, this is
That's very interesting. I think that's the first time I'm hearing it. I'm sure many of our viewers, many of our listeners are. There's a question on Bastion Bungalow. Bastion Bungalow used to be, when I was sub-collector under training in Ernakulam many years ago, Bastion Bungalow was where the sub-collector at Fort Cochin lived. Later, the sub-collector was moved out of Fort Cochin, moved out of Bastion Bungalow, is still in Fort Cochin. Now, there's a question from Ram. He says, hello, Sohan. I have one more question. The state government had announced that Bastion Bungalow in Fort Cochin will be a heritage museum. This announcement was made many years back. He says, till now, has anything been done on that? Is there any action INTAC has initiated to follow this up?
Now, some work has been done in setting up the museum there, and the government has done wonderfully. Within their capacity, they have set up a museum. It's just getting completed. People are just started allowing. The inauguration was last week. So it will take some time to settle down and see. The Bastion Bungalow is one of the 7 bastions of the old fort. We had 3 forts in Fort Cochin. The first, the huge fort built by the British, by the Portuguese. Before that, they had a small fort built with timber. Then the huge laterite and lime fort, which was downsized by the Dutch. And all these 3 forts, this is the common factor. The Bastion Bungalow, which was named later by the Dutch as a Stromberg Bastion. When the Dutch downsized the fort, there remained only 7 bastions, and all these 7 bastions they named after islands in Netherlands. And so we have the Stromberg Bastion, we have the Holland Bastion, we have the Glenderland Bastion, the Zeeland Bastion. So each bastion that survives, now there are only 4 bastions that survive, and these
Bastion is a fort.
Bastions of the fort. The fort is completely destroyed, disappeared because the British destroyed it. Only the foundation of the fort is visible when the sea comes in, or in parts we can identify the area where the wall goes. Only that is remaining. So these bastions have to be preserved, and this is one of the bastions where the European officers who ruled Cochin, that was their residence come camp office. And when after independence, people who were there, all the officers who came from the IAS, the sub-collectors, they stayed there and they had the camp offices there. So it's a very important building which continued to be the place where power was yielded from in British Cochin.
I remember visiting Bastion Bungalow when Sundareshan was a sub-collector there.
Okay.
It was an enormous building and you really felt you were in a fort when you were inside.
Yeah.
Sundareshan, of course, was a sub-collector those days. I can still remember it. Is it being renovated? I saw some news about it recently.
It was renovated. Earlier it was renovated, but in a wrong way. They didn't rely on the heritage regulations and things. And now they have done a little bit better job, and now it is Paka.
So Raja Rajiv Kumar and Neil George point out that a lot of Malayalis have been adventurous. Many, for example, Rajiv Kumar points out, have gone to Fiji and South America. And of course, these days they are very adventurous. There are so many of our Malayalis outside, as Neil points out. I'm just adding that as a fact so that we balance out what was said earlier by Ajit. Let me move on. Now, the people are confused by this, the names in Cochin. You have Fort Cochin, which is a small place in the city of Cochin. And then there is Ernakulam, which is the name of the district. But Ernakulam is also a town within Cochin city. So can you explain for people who do not really know how these names can be very confusing? You've got Kochi, you've got Fort Kochi, then you've got Ernakulam, which is a part of the city, but also the district. Can you explain that a little bit for people who are from outside and are confused by these, names within names within names?
So these names denote different places. Even when I said talked, I said Fort Cochin and Matanjeri, and the INTAC report is Fort Cochin Matanjeri, a heritage zone report. See, Matanjeri was under the Maharaja, and Fort Cochin was under the Europeans. And there is a canal that divides both these. That's called the boundary canal. So, and later, Ernakulam was not existing 500 years ago. Later on, Ernakulam developed and Ernakulam became a municipality. Fort Cochin happens to be the first municipality in the whole of India, or the Indian, or you can say the side of the Suez, because in 1517, the King of Portugal granted this title to Fort Cochin, declared it as a municipality, and also all the privileges and all the powers given to a Portuguese town at that time in Portugal that was conferred on Fort Cochin. That's how the word municipality came into the Indian lexicon.
How is it?
So,
Once more, how did the word municipality come into the Indian?
The King of Portugal declared Fort Cochin as a municipality in 1517, so long back, and also gave all the powers and privileges conferred to a Portuguese town to Fort Cochin. So we have not only municipality, we have the first hospital in the subcontinent, or you can say Asia, the first school, the first orphanage. So many things that you take for granted. These are all came in because this was the first European settlement, and all everything that you see today, the table, the words that we use. In Malayalam we call it Mesha. Mesha is a Portuguese word. Kasera is a Portuguese word. Janela, the window is a Portuguese word. The almirah is a Portuguese word. The toilet, the kakus is a Portuguese word. So many words, I can go on like that. We absorbed it because we did not go to invent another word for it. That is also part of the tolerance that we had. All
your knowledge, Sohan, about Cochin and its history and its geography is really amazing. I'm sitting here wonderstruck. I think I knew a lot about Cochin, but now hearing you, I realize my knowledge is just insignificant before the wealth of knowledge that you have. Thank you so much. I'll just move to one more area. Before that, Rajiv Kumar points out that Keralites moved to Fiji 300 years ago. It's not a recent phenomenon. So that's very important to understand.
No, that is just a forced migration. People are taken from here to work in the sugarcane fields, and all these colonial powers, they took people all around the world. That was part of it. It was not a voluntary migration. It was a forced migration, or in the different wars they took these people to fight. So many.
It was trafficking, yeah, in a way. Human trafficking. Let me move on. There's an island called Wellington Island between Ernakulam and Fort Cochin and Matangeri, for those who know the geography. Right. Now, it's an island. It's a very small island, man-made, I believe, and it's got an airport, it's got a seaport, it's got a railway terminal, and of course a lot of roads. Very unique. Now, why is Wellington Island not being promoted as a tourist destination? I thought it was an ideal tourist destination.
Wellington Island is actually the port. The British harbor engineer, Sir Robert Bristow, he dredged out this island with a dredger that was fabricated in England. It was brought here. There was no island between Ernakulam and Matangeri at that point of time. But then this artificial island was created, and everything was, as you said, the airport is there, the seaport is there, the railway terminal is there, the road terminal is there. It's very unique in so many ways. And now, till maybe 25 years ago, it was a hub of activity in Cochin. It was a port, activities were all there. Thousands of trucks coming and taking cargo, and now everything has changed because of containerization and house stuffing. Cargo is stuffed wherever it is produced, and it is only the container comes there and the hook takes it. So now it has become barren. It's like a graveyard. So there is potential for developing it into several things. One of that is what you mentioned as a tourist hub.
It must be one of the few islands, or perhaps the only island in the world which has got an airport, a sea terminal, a port, a railway terminal, and of course lots of roads.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. Tangsi is my batchmate in the Maharashtra Kada. She asked whether there are still Jewish families in Cochin. Is the synagogue still having religious functions?
There are, the synagogue doesn't have enough religious functions because there is a quorum for that. So many, only when the tourists come, they inform each other and they have this religious functions at that place. We have in Matangeri, Fort Cochin, the old Cochin, we have 2 synagogues, and in Ernakulam we have 2 synagogues. The oldest synagogue is now taken over by the government, which is called the Kadavambagan synagogue, which is the Malabari Jews synagogue. And the other is the Paradeshi synagogue, that is the foreigner synagogue. The people who came from Spain, when they were persecuted there, they came here. That synagogue is now 450 years old. The other synagogue is more than 500 years old, the Malabari Jew synagogue. So both these synagogues are now become very centers of attraction. But unfortunately, there is only one Jew remaining in Cochin, the Paradeshi Jew, and 2 Malabari Jews families existing No, all the others have gone back.
What is the difference between this Paradeshi Jew and Malabari Jew? One more time.
The Malabari Jew is the people who came with the Arabs to trade in the earlier centuries. The Paradeshi Jews were from Spain. When they were persecuted there, they understood that there is a place where they are safe. So they came here and they built their own synagogue. That synagogue is, year before last, we had the 450th anniversary of that synagogue. Because there were no Jews here, we could not celebrate. 400th anniversary, it was Indira Gandhi who came to celebrate that. And today we had only 1 or 2 Jews remaining, so we could not celebrate it. So for 500th anniversary, I don't think only Jewtown and the Jewish synagogue will be there to tell the story.
You told me that you told us there's one Jew left. Who is this one Jew?
Oh, he's the only one, Sam, I think his name is, we call him.
Sam is dead, isn't it? Sam died.
Sam Alegua. Sam Alegua.
Alegua,
younger one. Younger one means he'll be around 50, 55.
Okay, right. Now we are running out of time. We have been speaking a lot about the heritage of Cochin. Let's very quickly look into the future in the next 5 minutes. How much, you see, with the climate change and water level, sea levels rising across the world, do you think this climate change and the rise of sea levels will be a threat? The rise of sea levels will be a threat to Cochin in the future? Do you think Cochin as a city will go under the sea in the next, say, 3 or 4 centuries, or 1 or 2 centuries from now?
I've been following this for a long time. I think maybe 20, 30 years, 30 years we have been hearing this, that water level is, but I don't feel that water level is rising uncontrollably in Cochin. Even if there is a rise, it will be very gradual, which we can deal with. So there is no immediate threat, or at least foreseeable 20, 30 years, 50 years. I don't see any threat that suddenly something comes. Maybe there will be a phenomenon. There can be a phenomenon like the tsunami or something like that. But other than that, I don't think there is a threat that is perceived.
There's this question of waste management, Mr. Sohan. Waste management is a big problem in Cochin, as in many parts of Kerala and parts of India. How do you think we can effectively tackle this problem? This is a question from Ashwin.
That is the biggest challenge that Cochin is facing. I think we are on the road to having a sustainable system. We learned the hard way. We tried very different approaches, and now we are, I think, on the same. But the plus factor is that 80% of the waste is collected from the doorstep. Segregated collection is going on. We have been able to go up to that, which is, it's a big achievement. And the next 20% is not a big problem. So that is the primary stage of collection, transportation, and then treatment. These are the 3 stages. Collection is now 80%. That is a big success. And now the municipality has gone in for transportation and treatment. I think that will be a big success in the coming 5 years. We can manage that.
Tansy points out that she sees videos of Jewish families who return to Cochin to search for their Cochin roots. Just a statement, not a question. Now, we spoke about the sea levels rising. There's another threat to Cochin, the Mullaperiyar Dam, which is a dam that is built by Tamil Nadu on land belonging to Kerala. It's Kerala, but the land is Kerala, but the dam belongs to Tamil Nadu. It's 110 years old. It's I believe, an earthen dam. And a 110-year-old earthen dam can break any minute. I hope it does not. But if it breaks, if it bursts, what does it mean for Cochin? Do you think it will break? First question. If it does, what?
It was built by the British, and the scientists say it will never break because it is not a normal dam. It is what you call it stays there by the weight of it. So it's got a technical word for that. So
gravity dam.
Gravity dam. It is a gravity dam. So there is very little chance of it breaking. That is a scientific opinion. The Supreme Court has in with such a lot of committees and commissions and things, and they say it won't break. It was built by the British, and it serves it takes the water to the opposite direction in Tamil Nadu. And the story of it being built is worth some reading. Whoever is interested can go into why it was built and by the British at such a huge cost, human cost also at that point of time. So it's very interesting reading it.
Many, I mean, I'm not contradicting you, but many buildings, many constructions built by the British have broken. In case it breaks, what does it mean for Cochin? In
No,
case.
we have more,
God forbid it doesn't
we have more than 50 huge dams in Kerala. Some are very old, and for more than 50 dams, anything can break. Any chemical installation in around Cochin, all the chemical tanks are there on Wellington Island, as you said. All the chemical tanks are there. God knows anything, and the airport is there where the pilots are being trained. So many things are happening there. Anything can happen in a modern city. All these things, we have to live with it. That is the only answer that I can say. But
Thank you.
Mullaperiyar Dam,
You
even
don't
if it
think that a
breaks,
possibility like what happened in 1341 when Muziris was destroyed will happen in this case?
say this Mullaperiyar issue, there
Hello,
are so
are
many
you with
dams
me?
downstream. There are so many dams downstream. So
Hello,
where good
are you with
dam
me?
management, we can manage all these things.
I seem to have lost.
Hello, can
Can
you
you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you, Mr.
Yeah.
Sohan. We can
Yeah,
hear you.
this dam with good dam management, we have so many dams downstream. From Mullaperiyar is the top. From Idiki and all those which have huge dams. Mullaperiyar is comparatively a small dam. So downstream, if you can manage the dam management system is there, it can easily be contained. That is what scientists tell us.
Right. Thank you very much on that. Mohit reminds me that it's 8 o'clock now. My last question to you. If you are elected the mayor of Cochin again, say for the next 10 years, what would you do? You're laughing.
Waste management is the main thing. Waste is
Yes.
the main thing. Waste, the sewerage system. Yeah, I'll put all the basics right and put all the transportation. And as you mentioned earlier, it was water that created Cochin. The sailors who came from across the world and the spices that came from the hills through the waterways, that created Cochin. So the waterways have to be revived. That is, water is everything. You look at, have an aerial view of Cochin. It's a group of cluster of islands linked together by bridges and people. So reviving the waterways, reviving everything related to water will bring life to Cochin again. And Cochin will be a very unique place. Many of these islands, many of the people who come to Cochin have never seen the islands around Cochin. It's so pristine, it's so beautiful if you go around. But water metro that is coming now will link all these islands, and people will have an opportunity to go and see all these islands. And through water, we can go to Muziris. The Muziris Museum that is coming up, the excavation sites that if you go in, the Roman coins, the Roman linkages that can be seen in all the artifacts that we have got from the excavation. These are all opportunities that are coming in the 1 or 2 years. Anybody who comes to Cochin can go around, see all these ways. Now it is Munnar and Tekadi and so many places. But now the backwaters will take you to all the islands, pristine islands, all the Virgin Islands, all the Muziris sites. And there are 16 jetties being built in Muziris, around Muziris. You can land there, walk to the site and come back.
The last word from Jose Dominic, he says it's water that created Cochin. He hopes that it is not water that will destroy Cochin, either Mullaperiyar or sea levels going up. The last word from Cochin.
Okay.
So thank you so much. I'll remind our viewers that on the 7th of March, the next episode, the 16th episode of All That's Kerala, Chat Along the Backwaters, we'll have Sumi Joseph talking to us about women, men, menstruation, and Shabarimala. She argues that it is scientifically proven that women going to Shabarimala, because of the influence of the chakras on the human body, will affect their menstruation. It's going to be a very interesting, perhaps a little bit controversial topic to discuss. So I just want to announce that now. Thank you so much, Sohan, for being with us. I'll hand over the floor. I'll hand over the video, the camera, to Mohit and Aditi to say the last words. Just hold on for a minute, please. Mohit, Aditi.
I think, sir, you just gave us a reason to host Kerala and Cochin in Delhi. And I would be now super excited to, as part of the City Experience Festivals that I also curate, where the idea is to showcase one city to another city, and that too with resources like you, Mr. Sohan. And definitely we have our dear friend Aditi to curate on the arts part. But on the history, the heritage, the stories, why the Chinese name towards the crackers and the chinupatti, that's what I was noting. You have just given us a lot of reason to read more as travelers to wherever we visit. Many times we just don't know the name, the meaning of our own names, leave out aside the cities. But today you just took us into a completely new journey, and so fascinated to hear you. I would love to watch this recording again, I must say. Aditi.
That was exactly my thought, Mohit, that the recording itself will be, we'd like to go over it and take notes once again and start looking into all of those.
And should be shown in all schools. I must say, Mr. Sohan, I think despite you being an administrator, a mayor, you should also be a teacher. You should actually teach school
He is
children.
very much. Yes, he is.
He is many things. He's a politician.
Yeah.
He's a social worker. He's a culture preserver. So many things. It is fascinating. I don't know how to say it. I thought I knew everything about, a lot about Cochin. I was also a mayor here once, but I just realized I know just a fraction of what I should have known. Fascinating. Thank you so much. Last words, Aditi.
Well, that was really a wonderful session. I think, we touched on a lot of things in a very short time. And I think food for thought for future sessions also. Looking forward to more All That's Kerala always. Thank you, Mr. Sohan. Thank you so much for that. That was really a wonderful, thank you so much. Really.
Thanks again, Sohan. Thanks to all the viewers. Thanks for all the questions that poured in, the comments that poured in. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful questions. We had some really good questions tonight. Probably. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks so much. Bye.